first things first, I'm gonna go ahead and remove this because I want my app to switch as per the user's needs. Alright, so here so far we have seen how to keep a fixed orientation, that is either portrait or landscape, but this time I'm gonna go one step ahead and exactly show you how your app or your activity or your Java code can get notified when the orientation changes. It's like buying a ticket for a movie. First you need to stand in the queue and say config changes, Android config changes. Alright, so this statement exactly tells your Android operating system that if something changes, please tell me. Now you have to tell your Android operating system what is that something. Alright, so here you're saying orientation. So in short, this time you tell the Android system that hey, when the orientation changes, please tell my Java code. So the Android system will tell your Java code when the orientation changes, but where will it tell? For that you have a method over here, and that method is called onConfigurationChanged. In short, every time the orientation changes over here, because you have mentioned it, right? You said that I want to be notified when the orientation changes. This method is going to be called by your Android operating system. Alright, so whatever code you write inside this is gonna get executed. You guys understanding that? Pretty simple, right? So let me go ahead and log this by saying log.d. First I'm gonna just test this. I'll give it a tags, vivs, message, orientation changed. So let me go ahead and run this. So now if you guys see, we are in the landscape mode. Let me switch the orientation by pressing Ctrl F11. Now we are in the portrait mode. Alright, the activity has been destroyed. It's getting recreated as per the life cycle which we discussed last time. But if you guys notice something, whoa, the log.d has not been called. What the hell? You guys are probably wondering what is going on. This method should be called when the orientation changes, right? Because that's why you wrote all this code. But why isn't it happening? This is one of the biggest problems which I have seen people mention on Google. It's very simple. Here if you see, your target SDK version is 17. Now here's something very funny. Before 12 this works perfectly. Alright, this code works perfectly for anything before 12, before honeycomb. Now but for the later versions, that is after 12, you need to register for both the orientation and the screen size, because in the later versions the screen size also changes when the user switches from landscape to portrait or portrait to landscape. Alright, so now if you guys see, this is gonna run perfectly, because now when the orientation changes, the screen size is also changing, right? So that means both are changing, and that's why this method on configuration change will be called. You wanna see that? Let me go ahead and run this. So here I'm in my portrait. Let me press Ctrl F11 to go to my landscape mode. As you guys can see, it says orientation change over here. That method is working perfectly, because every time the orientation changes, your Android manifest, you've already mentioned over here that hey, please tell me if the orientation changes. So your Android system is alright, I'll tell you, and this method gets called, right? That's what is happening simply over here. So again, if you go from landscape to portrait by Ctrl F11, take a look, it's getting called another time. That means each time it's gonna switch from one orientation to the other, this function is gonna call and this line is gonna run, and you're gonna see this message. Alright, so at this point we're almost done, but how do we know which orientation we are? That is what we have to find now. Alright, now if you notice, there is this configuration object over here which your Android operating system has created for you and passed it. Now this object contains all that kind of information which you need. For example, new config dot orientation contains the value for what orientation you're currently on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do a simple test over here. Alright, let me just first try to print this and see what happens. I'll simply have a log.d message over here. I'll put my tag as vivs and my message is something plus the value of that variable, which is new config.orientation. Alright, so in short, now this value is actually going to print out whatever orientation it is. Let's go ahead and see what happens. Ctrl S, run this again. So here I'm in my portrait mode. Let me switch to the landscape by saying Ctrl F11. As you guys can see, it's printing out something called 2 over here. Again, if you go ahead, change the orientation, it's printing 1 over here. Now this 1 and 2 are numbers probably that are showing something, so right? So we need to actually go ahead and compare them, and that's how we are going to check which orientation it is. So let me remove this log.d and I'll say if new config dot orientation equals configuration object, this has a static field called orientation landscape. So now I'm gonna go ahead and print my log.d over here. In my message I'll say welcome to landscape mode. I'll have an if else if over here. Again I need to check the same thing. I'll say new config dot orientation, is this equals to your configuration dot portrait. In that case I'll have the same log.d. Alright, and instead I'm gonna say welcome to the portrait mode. Simple. As you guys saw earlier, we had 1 and 2 values. So what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna simply compare with them static values over here, and this is gonna give me the orientation. So let me go ahead and run this by saying Control S. So here let me switch to landscape mode by pressing Control F11. As you guys can see, it says welcome to the landscape mode. Let me again switch to portrait by saying Control F11. As you guys can see, it's saying welcoming to portrait mode. So this is working perfectly. Every time your orientation changes, this on configuration method is called. This object configuration is passed, which contains the information about your orientation. Simply use this variable called configuration.orientation. Compare it with orientation landscape or orientation portrait. These are two constant values which are integers basically, and if they are, then just simply print the message. Alright, so I hope you guys understood something out of this. Remember, please do not stick to a fixed orientation. That is gonna screw up your app. I don't like apps which do that. Personally, I uninstall them. So if you guys like what you saw, please subscribe to my channel, comment, leave your thoughts, let me know what you think about this. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you guys later. Have a nice day.